Everywhere you go, everyone's talking about the 2015-2016 NBA season. But do we really know why we are so excited? I'm Mr.Taliaferro with Itsmrtaliaferro.com, and I'll try my best to look at every team in the NBA and break all this down for us. Is this the year the Philadelphia 76ers finally make a stride in the right direction after drafting Duke center Jahlil Okafor? I personally think he was the best player in last year's draft. Can Okafor coexist with another young first-round pick, Nerlens Noel, who's trying to find his way as well? Will Joel Embiid ever get healthy and stop tweeting so much? It would help if the 76ers could find a little bit of direction, don't you think? Speaking of number one picks, the number one overall pick in the 2015 NBA draft, Karl-Anthony Towns' impact is needed, and it is needed now. Can he lead the Minnesota Timberwolves defense, a team that gave up the most points per game last season? Can he put them in a position to fight for a spot in a tough Western Conference? Is it time for Andrew Wiggins to take the next step forward and show us signs of the Tracy McGrady comparisons so many experts have thrown on him? Can Wiggins and Town coexist? Are they the best young 1-2 punch since Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook? Can slam dunk champion Zach LaVine be considered more than just a high flyer and be a legitimate third option on this young team? The Charlotte Hornets made a couple moves in the offseason that we'll just have to wait and see how they pan out. Adding Nicholas Batum to the mix basically replaces Lance Stevenson, who never panned out. And how many more years can we expect Al Jefferson to average 17 points and 8 rebounds? He's entering his 12th season in the league. What's the next step for Kemba Walker as the point guard of this team? How will the Hornets incorporate Frank Kaminsky and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist as he returns from injury? Speaking of teams with good defenses and can't score the basketball, can you name a team who gave up the fewest points per game last season? The Utah Jazz still have me scratching my head after drafting Dante Exum with Trey Burke already in the backcourt. Though the expectation is for Exum to move over to the 2, can we really expect Exum to make this transition smoothly when he has always had the basketball in his hand throughout his career? Can the tandem of Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert finally become formidable? Gobert almost averaged a double-double last season. Now more will be expected of him since Enes Kanter will not be starting the season with this team for the first time in a while. As crazy as this might sound, I think the Brooklyn Nets made a great decision in finding a way to get rid of Darren Williams. Now you get Shane Larkin, who looks ready to take over the helm in Brooklyn. And if he can't get it done, you have a proven, consistent veteran in Jerry Jack who can come in and take over. Joe Johnson has never been a vocal leader, more of a do-as-I-do type guy. Well, the Nets need a vocal leader this year. From ownership on down to the players, nothing seems stable in Brooklyn. You lose the emotional leader in Kevin Garnett at the trade deadline, and you invest in an injury-prone Brook Lopez and Thaddeus Young. Things are looking pretty skeptical in Brooklyn. Good luck. The Portland Trail Blazers might be one of the teams to fall out of the Western Conference playoffs after an offseason that's seen them lose a 21-point scorer and 11 rebounds a game in LaMarcus Aldridge. I think any team would take a step backwards after losing that much firepower. We have now entered the era of Damian Lillard as the official leader of this team. Rarely have we seen a lot of success when it's a really good point guard and everyone else. But if there's anyone who will take it personal, it's Lillard. Can you really trust Noah Vonleh, though, to be a viable number 2 option for this team? The thing that scares me is that this team will be at the bottom of the West, but they'll still muster up like 30 to 35 wins. That's not going to get you a great spot in the lottery. You're better than the bottom of the East, but can't compete in the West. That's a terrible spot to be in. Then you get another late lottery pick, and the rebuild process takes longer and longer. This team has always hit it big in the draft. I don't think anyone is down to play for the Portland Trail Blazers, especially when everyone will have money next offseason. Speaking of teams that spent a little money in the offseason, are the Orlando Magic finally ready to take that step in the next direction? Well, if I were doing this ranking in 5 years, I'm pretty sure this team will be close to the top. Alfred Payton and Victor Oladipo in the backcourt, and Tobias Harris, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Vucevic. Fun fact, LaMarcus Aldridge, Anthony Davis, and DeMarcus Cousins all averaged 19 points and 10 rebounds a game last season. Can you name the other guy on that list? Nikola Vucevic. Interesting team. You have a lot of guys who can put the ball in the basket, but will these young guys be dedicated to defending? We expect the Brooklyn Nets to come out of the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, but will the Magic be able to squeeze in? You would think with Paul George back in a healthy Indiana Pacers squad, they would have something to say about that. Or will they? Speaking of the Indiana Pacers, it seems as if those recent days of considering this team one piece away from a championship are over. The heart and soul of your team, David West, declines a $12 million offer to go sign with the Spurs for $1 million. You claim you're going in a different direction and basically give away Roy Hibbert to the Lakers, your best impact player on defense. Now you go out and get a capable 20-point-per-game scorer in Monte Ellis. But is this more of a move to keep this team competitive? How will Paul George adjust to playing the 4? It will be interesting to see how Frank Vogel will adjust George when the team goes up against some of the powerhouses who scored threes in the Eastern Conference, a la LeBron James or Carmelo Anthony, or even some of the young forwards like a Tobias Harris or Jabari Parker. Player to look out on this team. Miles Turner could easily come in and make an impact early, I'm telling you. The guy's good. Will the Denver Nuggets ever get rid of these good pieces and turn them into great ones? Expect this team to have one of the hottest lines come trade deadline if they're not in contention. Individually, I love the talent present on this roster, but collectively, this doesn't seem like a good match. You have Danilo Gallinari, who can shoot the ball but can't defend or stay healthy. Wilson Chandler, who can score but is inconsistent. Kenneth Faried, who's a great athlete, but is an undersized 4 who really can't stretch the court at the 3. You need that in the NBA now. That's $35 million right there next season. You gotta make a trade. There's a lot of teams who could use one of these guys, if not 2 of these guys on their roster, trust me. Not to mention you have a Gary Harris, a respected guard coming out of Michigan State a year ago who can shoot and defend. He just cannot average 3 points a game this season. I'll give you a name you don't hear often. Will Barton. Portland underutilized this guy while he was there. He's going to have to come in and commit to defense, but if he does, the battle between he and Harris will be one to look out for. And last but not least, one of my new favorite players, Emmanuel Mudiay. I actually caught up with Mudiay this summer, and he had this to say when I asked him about taking over as point guard in Denver.
Things have worked out in a way that you're kind of in that lead for that starting role next season. Now, any pressure with you going forward, now knowing that it's kind of opened the door for you to just step in?
Nah, definitely no pressure. Well, I guess they can say it's pressure, but to me, I've been having pressure my whole life. So it's definitely nothing, new to me. I'm just gonna go out there. I mean, you gonna have ups and downs, but you gotta just stay steady.
Basketball, what are you bringing to the table?
Just a competitor, man. Trying to win. I'm a winner. Unfortunately, today I lost, but I ain't gonna use today. But yeah, it's all fun and games today. But giving back. But at the same time, you always want to win, man. You don't want to be labeled a loser.
Mudiay will have his hands full taking over for Ty Lawson, but I'm telling you, this guy has the motor, athleticism, and playmaking ability to be special. Let's not forget, before deciding to go overseas last season and decommitting from SMU, this would have been a game-changing player at the collegiate level. Here's a team that would be better than a lot of people expect. The Boston Celtics. How can Coach Brad Stevens add to what was already a surprisingly successful first season? You go out and add an NBA champion in David Lee, who has a lot to prove after Golden State basically gave him away in a salary dump. You keep Isaiah Thomas. You get back Marcus Smart, who dealt with injuries all last year. This team just caught a bad break last year. It's quite simple. LeBron doesn't lose in first rounds. I like what this team did in the draft. I got my eye on Terry Rozier out of Louisville and Jordan Mickey out of LSU. 5 years down the line, I think we look at Mickey as one of the best prospects in that draft. Speaking of one of the best in his draft class, who had a more interesting offseason than DeMarcus Cousins and the Sacramento Kings? Did you really think the Kings would get rid of their cornerstone of their franchise, DeMarcus Cousins? You ever had a science project that you really felt had the potential of being really good, but at the same time it could be really bad and be bad in a hurry? Well, this is pretty much the Kings roster. There are a lot of hotheads on this team, from Cousins to Rajon Rondo to Ben McLemore, even Rudy Gay and Willie Cauley-Stein. This team might make up their own playbook. But this isn't the first time George Karl had his hands full. Do you remember those good old Carmelo Anthony, Allen Iverson-led Denver Nuggets teams? It will be interesting to see who demands a trade first, or who gets suspended first, or who suspends George Karl. It could happen. Second half of the season, there weren't too many teams hotter than the Detroit Pistons. Brandon Jennings got the rolling. Hated to see him go down with the torn Achilles. But I seen a lot of good in his team after parting ways with Josh Smith. Stan Van Gundy has been known to spark a fire on the teams when facing adversity. Remember that Orlando Magic team? Bigger question. Is Andre Drummond ready to be the anchor of the team offensively and defensively? We know he can get it done on offense, but can he get it done on defense? Drummond will need to have one of those Amari Stoudemire first season in New York-like seasons after the Pistons lost Greg Monroe in the offseason to the Milwaukee Bucks. I've yet to understand why you give Reggie Jackson an extension and pay him max money, but maybe you just don't believe in soon-to-be free agent Brandon Jennings. Player to watch for this team. Caldwell Pope can get it done. Expect him to take a huge step forward and learn a lot from veteran Caron Butler. I brought up Greg Monroe earlier, speaking of his new team, the Milwaukee Bucks. Well, they'll be hard to beat because half of the team is still growing. This team gave the Bulls all they could handle in the playoffs without the number 2 pick, Jabari Parker, who tore his ACL last season. Parker was well on his way to being Rookie of the Year before his injury. To be honest with you, I would have gave him Rookie of the Year because he wants to play for Milwaukee. Jalen Rose calls Kobe Bryant a remix of Michael Jordan. Well, Jabari Parker is the remix of Carmelo Anthony. This team could easily compete for a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. Add Jonas Antetokounmpo and Michael Carter-Williams to the mix, and you see a team that will be stifling on the defensive end of the basketball court. Can Jason Kidd bring the best out of these players on defense, though? Kidd was never known for defense as a player. Did the Toronto Raptors take a step forward this offseason or take a step backwards? Well, the city of Toronto had significant wins if we think about Drake and Meek Mill or the recent success of the Toronto Blue Jays. The Raptors went out and signed DeMar Carroll away from Atlanta, but didn't do much to bolster their bench, an area where they struggled in the postseason last year. My suggestion for the Raptors, get the ball to Jonas Valanciunas a little more. Over his first 3 seasons, he's shooting over 55% from the field and about 78% from the free throw line. Get him the ball. Over the past 2 seasons, he's only averaging about 8 field goal attempts and 12 points per game. It's time for DeMar DeRozan to show us if he's capable of being a max player. It's time for Kyle Lowry to show us if he can lead a team into the Eastern Conference Finals. This team could very easily take a step backwards this season. Only time will tell. The Phoenix Suns had a very interesting offseason. Well, to be honest, a pretty interesting calendar year. Eric Bledsoe and Brandon Knight in the backcourt still doesn't scream cohesiveness, but this seems like the direction the Suns are dedicated to. Knight is in a contract year. I think it would be a good idea to go after a bigger 2-guard or a forward who can get it done as a guard in the backcourt with Bledsoe. I love Bledsoe's game. I think his relationship with LeBron is why I never closed the door on Cleveland going out and getting Bledsoe for Kyrie one day. Yeah, I said it. I think Bledsoe would be a better fit. Speaking of free agency, do you remember when LaMarcus Aldridge strongly considered going to the Suns? I think it just speaks to the direction of this franchise. My only concern is that we know the Thunder will be back in the playoffs if they're healthy. We're going to say Portland will take a step backwards. Who would the Suns replace if they were to make the playoffs in the Western Conference? The Mavericks, maybe? Maybe Tyson Chandler comes back and costs his old team a playoff berth. That'll be an interesting storyline. Speaking of the Dallas Mavericks, wow, it was an entertaining offseason for Mark Cuban and the Mavs. After signing DeAndre Jordan, and then, well, not signing DeAndre Jordan, I think it's safe that November 11 is setting up to be one of the most entertaining matchups in the NBA season in the early going. Dallas did have some really good things, and if they only had DeAndre, I believe this team had the goods to make one more run at a championship. The signing of Wesley Matthews was a very slept-on move. Matthews can really stretch the floor. And what about Darren Williams? Most of us thought he should have signed with this team a few years back when he was a free agent. But he finally gets that opportunity to play for his hometown team. How much does he have left in the tank? I believe this year has all the making of being a big one for Chandler Parsons. Can he make the leap and become a leader on both ends of the court? If not, this team could really struggle on the defensive end of the court. Expect a shootout every time you head down to Texas. I could easily see this team joining Portland as one of the teams on the outside looking in come NBA playoff time. A lot of people believe the Washington Wizards were just one healthy John Wall away from not only being in the Eastern Conference Finals, but they could have made it to the NBA Finals with all the injuries the Cavs had. John Wall, to me, should have gotten more recognition for the MVP last season. But hey, there's this year, and the East is more wide open than ever. The Bulls are going through a lot of transitions right now. I think this is the time for the Wizards to grab a 2 seed, or maybe even go after a 1 seed. LeBron is 31, and the Cavs have injuries, so expect them to rest their starters a lot of the season. The Wizards have young legs. Bradley Beal is only getting better. He needs to average more than 15 points a game. Wall is becoming a better leader every time out. It seems like this team doesn't mind going inside out with Gortat and Nene. I love the acquisition of Jared Dudley. He can really shoot the ball. I think somewhere down the line, rookie Kelly Oubre will really find his game and be a nice little pick for this team. I think this team is one trade deadline move away. Yes, the nation capital, ladies and gentlemen, will make things very interesting next season. One of those teams the Wizards will be competing with next season will be the reigning regular season Eastern Conference champs, the Atlanta Hawks. We kind of forget that the Hawks kind of ran away with the East last season. The Hawks were unbeatable at one point last season, as a matter of fact. Kyle Korver wasn't missing. Paul Millsap was unstoppable on a low block. Al Horford was a beast, and of course Jeff Teague orchestrated all this traffic. But there was one player who didn't get a ton of recognition, and that's DeMar Carroll. With Carroll no longer on his team, the Hawks lose their rough rider and defensive anchor. Their bench is still really good. I love Mike Scott. Tim Hardaway Jr. will become a really good player soon. Trust me on that one. He finally will be in a system that will get him a lot of looks. That boy can ball. This team ranked 2nd in assists last season and 5th in points allowed. They force you into bad shots and make you work on the other end of the court. Really tough team to defeat in the regular season. You can say that the Hawks' grit and grind made the difference last season. Did I say grit and grind? Speaking of tough-minded defensive teams, when will the NBA stop sleeping on the Memphis Grizzlies? This team is counted out every year, but down the stretch, this team seems to be around. They're one score away. I repeat, they are one score away from getting over the hump. And they need to do it soon while Zach Randolph is still an elite player. As crazy as this sounds, this team actually could use a J.R. Smith or a Nick Young on their roster. Not knocking either of those guys, I'm just saying that neither of those players have been known to pass the basketball. At times, it's almost as if the Grizzlies are looking for someone to chunk up a shot. I love me some Tony Allen, but it's time. Use him for situations like when you're playing a Golden State in the playoffs. But as a starter for 82 games, no. You shouldn't be able to step 10 feet away from an NBA player. I'm just saying, that's kind of ridiculous. The Grizzlies still have the most talented center in the game. The two big men probably have the most chemistry in the NBA. To go along with Mike Conley, who I've had to realize is a point guard you can build your team around, seeing how much we missed him in Game 1 last season against Golden State. Matt Barnes fits the grit and grind system. Jeff Green is pretty much what you see, what you get. But I'll give you a jewel. The Grizzlies bench is legit. Jordan Adams can ball. He needs to be consistently in the rotation. Jarnell Stokes is formidable as a rebounder off the bench as well. Pairing him up with Brandon Wright makes this bench really tough. The Los Angeles Lakers could use help on their bench. Well, they could use help in their starting lineup for that matter. Let's break this down. The Los Angeles Lakers had the opportunity to draft Jahlil Okafor, a player who I thought was a can't-miss pick. And you take D'Angelo Russell, who I'm not saying he won't be a good player, but Okafor is a special, listen to me when I say this, a special offensive talent. So you get Russell just knowing you'll get a top big man in free agency. And LaMarcus Aldridge reportedly said your pitch was terrible. Y'all talked about everything but basketball. Then you miss on Greg Monroe, who you would think would love to play for the Lakers or the Knicks. He chooses Milwaukee over you, and you're left with Roy Hibbert. The reality of the situation is no one wants to play for Jerry Buss, and no one wants to play with Kobe Bryant. I have a lot of respect for Kobe Bryant, but some of his selfish actions that he did at 25 are haunting him at 37. People will put up with the mess as long as the talent is undeniable. LeBron has brought a new flavor to the NBA. Players go out of their way to play with him, while Kobe, not so much. Kobe has to realize that he can't play ISO basketball anymore. It's interrupting the growth of Jordan Clarkson and probably will have a negative impact on Russell. I haven't even gotten to Nicky Azalea. Swaggy P is, Swaggy P. There's a couple bright spots in Hollywood. I spoke about Clarkson and I spoke about Russell. Julius Randle looks like he's about to rebound after missing the entire season last year. But the bottom line is, until Jerry Buss is relieved of his duties, the Lakers will be a shell of themselves, and the Clippers, yes, I said it, the Clippers, will continue to run the city of Los Angeles. While Phil Jackson's former team continues to struggle, his new team, well, they're not too much better. I'll tell you what, the Knicks will be better than a lot of people expect. You go out and add Aaron Aflalo and Robin Lopez to your starting lineup. You go out and add to your bench with Derek Williams and Sasha Vujacic. You go out and draft Jaren Grant, who will be a good player down the line, and you add Kristaps Porzingis to the mix. I love saying his name, Porzingis. You laugh at Porzingis now, but he will be better than a lot of people think. He's closer to Nowitzki than he is Bargnani. The thing about the East is that it's so bad, if Carmelo just stays healthy, they will compete for a 4 or 5 seed. Now, Melo's health is another issue. Melo, just like Kobe Bryant, could make his life much easier if he just didn't play so much ISO basketball, trusting your teammates. Will Melo ever buy into Derek Fisher's triangle offense? Speaking of Derek Fisher, never mind. The Knicks will have to work on the competitiveness of this team. They ranked dead last season in point differential at a minus 9.3 points per game. Ouch. Led by the soon-to-be best player in the NBA, Anthony Davis. Let's face it, he might already be the best player in the NBA. The Pelicans made a huge leap in the right direction, making the postseason last season, and played the soon-to-be NBA champions in the first round. Can Anthony Davis take another leap forward? I mean, how much more can you ask of the guy? He did average 24 points and 10 rebounds and almost 3 blocks a game. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet your next megastar, Anthony Davis. We know he's good, but what about his supporting cast? Can the Pelicans genuinely count on Tyreke Evans and Eric Gordon to remain healthy for an entire season? Well, they obviously can't count on Tyreke Evans because he's already injured. Can Ryan Anderson find a range from 3? Last season, Anderson shot 34% from 3. He's a career 37% shooter from 3. Will Jrue Holiday finally be able to stay healthy for an entire season after career best averages last season in just 40 games? It sounds cliche, but the Pelicans will have to sustain good health to compete with some of the big boys in the Western Conference. They simply don't have the depth of the top teams in the Western Conference, but they might have the best player. One team the Pelicans will have to compete with in the Western Conference will be the Houston Rockets. Is James Harden the top player in the league? We certainly can say he's the best two guard at the moment, but can James Harden become a leader on the defensive end? Harden made much improvement in his defense last season, but there's still room before we consider him an elite defender. What got lost in Harden's great season scoring the ball last year is that he averaged 7 assists as well. Now, one will argue that the reason Harden tallies assists is because he controls the ball so many seconds of each possession. Harden still might be the most unstoppable driver to the basket. How will Harden bounce back after a tough postseason exit to the Warriors? Well, one way of getting over it is going out and getting one of the most respected guards in the league, Ty Lawson. Lawson and Harden in the backcourt? Now, I want to see that. Not to mention, you still have the tough-minded Patrick Beverley returning from injury. Trevor Ariza is still around, who can defend on the wing and knock down the open shot. One of the most slept-on moves at the trade deadline last season. Corey in the house. Corey Brewer is still around for the Rockets. He's tough and rugged. Did I almost get through an entire Rockets segment without mentioning Dwight Howard? Well, Dwight Howard did average career lows in points and rebounds and played just half the season. But Howard's still a force on both ends of the court when healthy. But how many more years can he be elite? Do the Rockets have enough firepower to compete with the likes of the Warriors or even the San Antonio Spurs? It seems like health and LeBron James have been the only things holding the Chicago Bulls back over the past 4 to 5 seasons. The Bulls entered this season for the first time in a while with not many championship expectations. How many more years can Joakim Noah continue to log 35-plus minutes and be healthy come postseason? Al Gasol has been in a multitude of Warriors during his career. Can he hold up after his season ended early? Derrick Rose, probably the biggest question mark. He scared the entire world a couple weeks ago with an orbital fracture. We don't care. We don't want to hear Rose and injury in any sentence. Rose has not been scared to discuss free agency in the upcoming years, but where is his market value? Can Rose lead this team to a deep playoff run? Should the Bulls run the offense through the rise of Jimmy Butler? Last season's most improved player, Jimmy Butler, averaged 20 points per game after posting just 9 games of 20 points or more in his first 3 NBA seasons. You talk about improvement. If Rose and Butler can ever realize that they need each other to be great, on top of some of the hits this team has had throughout the draft in the last couple years, new head coach Fred Hoiberg could possibly lead this team to a finals appearance before the window closes. Bobby Portis will be an impact player for this team. Nikola Mirotic is really good, but can we expect decent stats from him and Doug McDermott? They kind of both do the same thing. But the thing that stood out to me last season with this team is that it kind of seems like they took a step backwards on the defensive end. What do we know about the Chicago Bulls? No matter who's on the court, this team will still rebound and defend. But last season, it was just not there. Maybe this team gave up on Coach Tibbs. Maybe the injuries finally caught up with this team mentally. But this team was still third in rebounding, and Chicago faithful will be looking for this team to rebound back after a second-round exit last season in the playoffs. Things are getting really hot down in South Beach, as it seems as if the Miami Heat have a team that could possibly compete for a championship. Hassan Whiteside. This 7-foot specimen might be the key to getting the Heat over the top and back into the NBA Finals. After averaging 11 points and 10 rebounds last season, Whiteside's biggest impact easily is the shots he's able to alter on the defensive side of the ball. Now, to put him with the returning Chris Bosh, who is still one of the most talented fours on the perimeter, the Heat are set down low after picking up Goran Dragic at the deadline to run the offense and drafted Justice Winslow, who was an absolute steal at 7. Speaking of Winslow, he might be the starter at the 3, competing with Luol Deng by the end of the season. We all know Luol Deng has been one of the best defenders on LeBron throughout their battles. You go out and get Amari Stoudemire, who still can contribute off the bench, to go along with Birdman Chris Anderson, who's still around. Mario Chalmers can still be a floor general off the bench. And not to mention, you still have Dwayne Wade. Flash, when healthy, is still an elite 2 guard. You think he doesn't think about LeBron taking his talents back to Cleveland? You think he wouldn't mind taking out this team in the conference finals? Right now, I believe the Heat and the Cavs are on a collision course to a matchup in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Heat might have the most talented starting lineup in the Eastern Conference. If you think about it, you just genuinely think about it, where is the drop-off in this lineup? If you sleep on the Heat, D-Wade and company might just wake you up come June. Well, going into the past offseason, there were no secrets who the San Antonio Spurs would go all in for. And boy, did they hit the jackpot. Doesn't it just feel like LaMarcus Aldridge was meant to play for this organization? You never see Greg Popovich and the Spurs actively recruiting players. But they knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime get, and for all intents and purposes, the replacement for Tim Duncan. Aldridge's post-up game is nearly unstoppable. Do we remember that postseason series he had against Houston a couple years back? He can rebound the ball well, and his demeanor on the court is quiet. But trust me, it's deadly. Do you know who else shares those same qualities? Tim Duncan. Duncan, with only a couple years left max in his career, would love to get that illustrious 6th ring. Duncan is still a really good player on both ends of the court. On top of Popovich managing his minutes, this will make him ready come postseason time. The thing I love about Duncan is that he played it the right way. He never was selfish. He got max contracts early in his career, and later on, instead of taking $20 million and leaving the Spurs with little flexibility, Duncan was okay with taking $10 to $12 million. This year, as a matter of fact, Duncan is making $5 million, and the Spurs are loaded. Kobe Bryant. Did you forget about Tony Parker? Parker might not be the player he was, but Parker is still lethal with the mid-range game, and that floater is still deadly. Parker's kryptonite will be facing some of the more athletic point guards in the West, a la Russell Westbrook and Stephen Curry. Manu Ginobili is still a clutch player, and you know he would love to go out on top. Ginobili can almost chill throughout the regular season, with Danny Green still knocking down threes and providing durability. It seems like the Spurs have hit the nail on the head with Kyle Anderson. Kawhi Leonard is becoming a top 10 player in the league, and guess what? He won't say one word to you while he's destroying you on the court. Leonard is a great defender and a good scorer in the Spurs system, and he's only 24. Leonard's scoring, rebounding, and assists have all improved every season in his first 4 seasons in the NBA. Wow. Though the big get was Aldridge, we cannot forget that former All-Star David West turned down a $12 million offer to return to the Pacers to sign with the Spurs. He could barely easily be the piece that gets this team over the hump. And maybe, just maybe, the Spurs are equipped to make one more run at a championship to cap off this dynasty. Well, if the Spurs expect to make it to the finals, they will have to get through the reigning NBA champion Golden State Warriors. After letting go Mark Jackson, I personally believe the Warriors would have a hard time believing in Steve Kerr, but the talent was there, and boy did they get the rolling. The deadly shooter lit up the association with incredible handles that usually end up with an unbelievable shot. If he wasn't embarrassing Chris Paul, he was somewhere pulling up from 30 with his splash brother Klay Thompson. We will get to Klay in a second, but back to Curry. Curry actually decreased in averages of points per game and assists, but his leadership improved last season. To keep this team motivated while you're having an incredible individual season just speaks to Curry's unselfishness and maturity. What's not to like about Curry? He's undersized, he has the handles, he's Curry with the shot, and he hasn't reached his prime yet. And Klay Thompson isn't so bad either. Though Klay struggled most of the NBA Finals, we can't just forget that he scored 37 points in the third quarter against the Kings in the regular season game. Outside of maybe Atlanta, Klay will be the top shooter on any NBA team, but because he's one half of the Splash Brothers, I believe we sometimes forget how great of a shooter he is himself. We haven't even got to what I consider the key of the team is Draymond Green. When Green is emotionally invested on the defensive end, this team is hard to beat. Not to mention when Green has the confidence on the defensive end, he gains confidence in his three-point shot. Granted, he doesn't make threes at a high percentage. He keeps defenders honest with his willingness to spread the floor. And oh, by the way, none of these players were even the Finals MVP. That accolade goes to Andre Iguodala, who Kerr has convinced to be the first man on the Warriors bench again this season. After trading David Lee for cap space and keeping Harrison Barnes, the Golden State Warriors might just have the necessary goods to give a repeat a shot. Now, my opinion, if the Thunder are healthy, the Warriors will go down. If the Grizzlies are healthy, the Warriors are going down. But with MVP Steph Curry, the Warriors will at least have a shot. You see how I did that? Ever had a fallout with someone special to you, and then you get together and realize, what are we even arguing about? Well, the Los Angeles Clippers had somewhat of a bromance last offseason when DeAndre Jordan had basically an I promise agreement with Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks. But the Clippers, aka Doc Rivers, Paul Pierce, Chris Paul, and Blake Griffin, actually went to Jordan's house right before the actual free agent signing period started and convinced Jordan to stay in LA. As far as on the court, the Clippers did some really nice things in the offseason. The first thing the Clippers did was go grab Lance Stephenson away from the Hornets, who almost would have gave Stephenson away for 4 pieces of candy. Stephenson is super talented, but he just hasn't been able to get it together over the course of his career. This might be his last big opportunity to play for a team in contention, and honestly, that will allow him to get big minutes. Stephenson will probably log most of the starts, with newly signed Paul Pierce being the closer for the team in the fourth quarter. Pierce adds a dynamic to this team that they so desperately needed. Pierce provides a fourth quarter guy that can knock down shots, get his own shot, and gives this team a little bit of toughness. No disrespect to Chris Paul, but your 6-foot point guard can't be the toughest guy on your team. Pierce is also someone Doc Rivers can genuinely trust. Speaking of trust, Blake Griffin is trusting his jumper more and more, and it's making Griffin a tough cover. After playing at the MVP season last season, Griffin erased the notion that he was a flashy dunker and just a flashy dunker. Many people don't realize that Griffin averaged 5 assists last season. Even though most of them went to DeAndre Jordan, that's still 5 assists last season from a power forward. Griffin's biggest assist of the season was easily getting Jordan to come back to the Clippers. The player probably with the most riding on this season has to be Chris Paul, though. Paul has yet to make it to a conference finals, and with the likes of Durant, Westbrook, Curry, and Lillard in the Western Conference, his clock is ticking. The great thing about Paul is he's not super athletic, so he'll be able to be great at what he does for years to come. Paul won't leave his prime as quickly as Kobe or D. Wade did. I don't think Paul gets enough credit for his feel of the game. He knows every spot on the court, and the Clippers will need every bit of it this season. Jamal Crawford still plays for this team, right? He's so consistent as the first guy off the bench that I think we take for granted just how good he is. He still has the sickest handle in the game, no disrespect to Stephen Curry, and no one in the history of the NBA has been able to knock down more three-pointers after getting fouled than he has. JJ Redick is still a valuable shooter in this league. Austin Rivers showed us that he belongs in the NBA last season with his stellar performances against the Rockets. Josh Smith took a pay cut, lets hints to wear a pay cut to play with this team after he previously defeated this team in the playoffs last season. Overall, the Clippers will need a couple things to fall in their favor, sort of like the Golden State Warriors had happen last season, if this team wants to compete for a championship. The Cavaliers were just a couple games away from bringing that sought-after championship to the city of Cleveland. Even with injuries, LeBron James almost got it done. He scored, rebounded, assisted, made sure that the Gatorade cooler had Gatorade, shot 7 commercials for Nike, and still had time to feed his pets every night. Well, maybe I exaggerated just a little bit. Has anyone ever noticed that every team LeBron plays on, he usually deals with significant injuries? It's almost as if he gets penalized because he keeps himself in such great shape. LeBron found ways to get the most out of players like his good friend Tristan Thompson and Matthew Dellavedova. I'll be honest, if just Kyrie was available at full strength in the finals, I believe the Cavs would have taken this series in 7. To add to the Cavs' problems, J.R. Smith lost his shot in the finals last year and made it nearly impossible for LeBron to get good looks. So how did the Cavs go about getting some help for LeBron? They go out and re-sign Mo Williams, former Cav. I believe this is the best move the Cavs could do for LeBron in free agency. I know this might sound a little crazy, but Williams might be a better fit for LeBron than Kyrie. LeBron has never needed a point guard that will dominate the basketball because, well, he dominates the ball. Williams can consistently knock down shots. Even if he's struggling, you can't take a man off Williams. Not to mention Williams doesn't play at the rim, so the chances of him suffering an injury, kind of like Kyrie did, are quite slim. The Cavs also kept it in-house, bringing back a few of their own. Re-signing Miles Goff was huge. The Cavs also gave Shumpert and Smith new deals to give them depth on the perimeter. They also basically gave Tristan Thompson max money, even though at the end of the season he probably won't be a starter. I'll never understand that. Let me break this down for you though. Brian and Tristan Thompson are good friends. They also share the same agent, Rich Paul, who is LeBron's best friend. When LeBron decided to go back to Cleveland, It was understood that Cavs owner Dan Gilbert would be willing to spend money and go deep in the luxury tax to keep some of these players that LeBron wants. Now, will LeBron come out and say give Thompson the max? No. But it's understood that Gilbert knows he has to do whatever it takes to please LeBron. Hence the fact that Brown will only sign one-year contracts to give himself the flexibility just in case Gilbert drops the ball again. But you can't hate Thompson for putting himself in a great situation. He's a great rebounder and extremely durable. He's yet to miss a game in his NBA career. The Cavs probably won't go hard after the 1 seed. Good health heading into the postseason is obviously more important. After LeBron took a shot for his back, you have to know he's preparing to carry the load at least to the top of the year when Kyrie is slated to return. But how much more longer can LeBron burden the load of carrying teams for an entire NBA season and be expected to be the greatest player come postseason? It's a lot to ask. He'll be 31 in December and has been to 5 straight NBA Finals. And these are tough 6 and 7 game series that he's been a part of, which makes the normal NBA fan wonder, is this the year we finally see the decline in King James? The Cavs will have their hands full with D Wade and the Heat in the Eastern Conference if my predictions serve correct. The Cavs might even struggle to get a 2 seed if Kyrie is out to January. But there's one thing for certain. A LeBron team is almost certain to make it to the NBA Finals. Wow. But who's the one team in the NBA, if they are healthy, that can defeat any team in the NBA in the postseason? The team that your favorite team should be scared of? Well, that will be the Oklahoma City Thunder. Let me make this clear. Barring a season-ending injury from this team, I know who I'm picking to hoist the trophy up in June. Kevin Durant is back and back with a vengeance. Entering a contract year, you know Durant will play with the chip on his shoulder that's created this drive in his career thus far. Durant is easily, and I say easily, the best pure scorer in the game. He can make any shot. He can make any shot. He will shoot 40 from 3, 50 from the field, and 90% from the free throw line. Wow. He'll take you off the dribble and jam it home. Or he might just sit back and drain a 3 from somewhere in Switzerland. Many sources believe that if Durant doesn't get it done this year, he's bound to leave Oklahoma City and take his talents elsewhere. By the way, with the new NBA TV deal, everyone will have money to spend. But is Durant even the best player on his team? On any other roster, that question will sound crazy. But Durant has a running mate by the name of Russell Westbrook, who is what we call a heartless individual. Westbrook has the best mid-range jump shot in the game today, with the ability to stop in transition and leave the defender looking stupid. He can get to the rack and finish with explosion. Outside of LeBron, he's the best athlete I've ever seen in my life. His competitive nature is one that I've only seen out of a player by the name of Kobe Bryant. You might have heard of him. Which probably is why Kobe said Westbrook is his favorite player in the league. But there is one question that still lingers around this team. Can the superstars get along? I say they can. Westbrook generally does a good job of picking his spots and knowing when it's time to get Durant the ball. These two ballers do have help. Serge Ibaka will be back from injury. Ibaka is still one of the top 3 defensive players in the league, blocking shots at an unbelievable rate. And we also got introduced to Ibaka's range last season, knocking down 77 3-pointers. That's triple the amount he had in his previous season. Add the addition of Enes Kanter, Durant has never had the luxury of playing with a scoring big man. The Thunder also caught a steal when they picked up a young man by the name of Cameron Payne out of Murray State. Payne doesn't have a whole lot of time to get adjusted to the league. The Thunder need him to produce now. Overall, with the Thunder having 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA, it will be hard to deny Durant of that illustrious first NBA championship. So that's why I conclude with the 2015-2016 NBA champs being the Oklahoma City Thunder. Yeah, I said it. Durant doesn't leave in free agency. We get a happy ending to this story. And then we go on to see Durant sign a huge deal, probably the biggest NBA contract in the history of free agency next offseason. And we see this story end happily ever after. This season is set to be a big one. A lot of big stars entering pivotal times in their careers. They all could use a championship to their collection. I got my popcorn. Do you have yours? For updates including weekly power rankings and season awards and Mr.Taliaferro's take on the NBA season, please subscribe to my channel. I'm a young college student. I'm 21 years old. I got an esteemed knowledge for this game. I love this game. I'm grinding. I'm working hard. A simple subscribe to my channel will go a long ways. Please. Thank you for watching this video. This has been my NBA preview of the 2015-2016 NBA season. Dear NBA, we, as fans, are ready. Hey, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to watch my interview, my performance, or maybe it was a feature story. Now, right now, you can either subscribe to my channel or you can watch other performances. Thank you for taking the time out. It's Mr.Taliaferro.com.
No problem.
You got to take me through your last month and a half, 2 months of your life. What has this all been like for you overall?
It's been busy, but, it's for the love of the game. Definitely a blessing just getting drafted,